Hello, hello. How is everyone doing? I hope everyone's doing well, and I hope that the sound is okay. I know this is a different soundtrack altogether. I haven't played it in a while, but I really love Streets of Rage. Rage 2. Oh no 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 no. Oh no. No 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 no. You can't talk, honey. It's just me. It's just me. No, but sorry. But anyway, as I was saying, hello Link Retro. Welcome in, welcome in. It's good to see you. Hello, hello. So, yes, I hope that the sound is perfect. Okay, perfect, perfect. So yeah, today I wanted to discuss the border, mainly because I've been having discussions with people all over, like in different Discord servers and such, but also just in general. Like obviously now that the real election season, quote unquote, has begun, I usually don't talk about like polls or stuff like that. That's not really Like, I've never, make a wish. Okay. And hello, Atticus. It's nice to see you. In fact, I even brought, you know me. I am a big book person. In fact, if you'd like to support me, my research in particular, you can always do so by donating towards the Throne book. Which, by the way, how we're gonna do the dono goal is, if we can hit either this one, right, the one on Throne, or the one on this one, right, whichever one we hit first. This one will make us do bad history, so we will watch like What If Alt Hist, and if we watch this one, we'll watch something like more serious, right, like something more of like a documentary type of thing. So depending on which one you want, right, you get to choose. So right now the easiest one to get is that one, but I did want to talk about the border, because I was looking over one of the books that I recommend to literally everybody to read, which is that the advertising, which is this book right here, by Camila Fojas, Border Optics, Surveillance Cultures on the U.S.-Mexico Frontier. I always recommend it for people to read. It's a very, like, when you understand the fact, like, how even this television shows that you watch, right, like, or that you binge watch on Netflix or whatever, are all part of the propaganda to make the border, like, ideologically acceptable thing, and you're reading through this and you're just like, oh my gosh, like, I can't believe that, like, we just watch it so passively. It really, really strikes you at just how that is. But we're going to be looking into one particular aspect, and that is the border crisis, right? So again, like, my hometown is on the Mexican U.S. border, right? Crossing the border is something that to me is like I had to do every day, right? So when it comes to discussing this particular topic, I like to often, give not only a personal perspective, which I think, is fine, but also sort of try to give this more historical, cultural studies perspective, right? Because of the fact that so much of it is ignored when discussing the border writ large, right? So we're going to be looking at this documentary, the U.S. border crisis. I don't like the fact that people still want to call it like illegal immigration. I don't think that there's any such thing as illegal. Hello, Neo Riot. It's so good to see you. It's so good to see you. Welcome in. So like I said, we will be watching this. And let me get the chat in YouTube up so I can see it, because right now I can't see it just yet. But yes, please like the stream. And also know that the thumbnail is of an art installation on the border wall itself. Like those coffins are a part of an art piece. And in fact, like for me, the wall, like the border fence that has been there since 1995, has always been actually like a place that I associate with art, right? Like it's very interesting. But yeah, exactly. No, there's no such thing as an illegal human, right? Like there's no such thing as an illegal person. And so that is one of the things that I kind of wanted to go into a little bit today. So without further ado, but yeah, like for me, like the border wall, I was so used to always seeing it like my entire like when I lived in Tijuana growing up, and I always saw it with like all this beautiful art, including even art in support of Palestine. So And this was years ago, right? This wasn't like, oh, now I've seen art. Like even back then, there was like a of Arafat, right? A painting of spray painting, I guess, of Arafat. But anyway, moving on.
These women, men, and girls come from Venezuela and Honduras. They're trying to enter the United States.
Also, by the way, the whole thing that, oh, there's a Venezuelan gang that took over an apartment complex, that's just not true. I don't know where on earth Tim Pool or at all decided to just like make up that story, but it's just like literally the video doesn't even show that. It shows possibly a crime being committed. That's about it. But like the city of Aurora, Colorado, the fact it's weird that they want to put such emphasis with this potential crime that occurred. Again, in the sense of that's what that video kind of shows, or seems to show. But they want to turn it into this whole big thing when Aurora, Colorado was the site of a, white supremacist event. I'll just put it like that. Bad event, during a screening of a Batman movie, if I remember correctly. So it's weird. I just came from a stream with a Zionist streamer who was pro-Palestine but had some sort of Zionist goals, even though they claim not to be. But they did fire off the same talking points. We both tried to inform them, then they just left. Oh well. It's nice to see Swedish streamers who are talking about Palestine. Oh, I mean, like right now I'm working on what would be my 4th article for the article series, the history of Zionism in Palestine. And I really see that connection, like from that chant that says from Palestine to Mexico, right? I see it, I feel it, like when I see the pictures of the border wall and the all of that stuff. It's like I know, my empathy will always be with the Palestinians, right? Like that will always be with whom I side with. And so that is something that that I find, I have also encountered people that kind of want to argue very strange arguments in defense of, the state of Israel, but they just are all empty and fall flat on their face. But, dos is dos, as the Hasidim say.
Do you know where you're going in?
The road isn't finished. There's a way through over there, but not if there's police. There's a spot by the river where the water is darker. Cross right of that.
A patrol.
Let's go to the next place.
They want to get across as quickly as possible.
So again, another thing I want to emphasize, there are many parallels and if you zoom out, it is the same base issue, right? And there is a really good chart called the Walled World that shows how the global north has been building walls, right? To literally just wall off the rest, wall everybody else out, right? And that's why, this book right here, when I'm gonna bring in some passages in a little bit. I just don't want to just be straight out reading from the book, but I did bring up some stuff that was talking about how most people that I've brought up on stream sometimes, that within 100 miles of the U.S.-Mexico border, you don't have your constitutional rights, but a lot of people don't realize that, and so this assumption that people are given, right, the right to, from searches and seizures and blah, 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 does not apply at all. In fact, she even mentions here Operation Drawbridge, which exploits the border deconstitutionalized zone to place cameras on private land. This program exploited access to private land for border security purposes through a provision of the Immigration and Nationality Act. The 100-mile rule allows agents to conduct, quote, reasonable searches, end quote, without, quote, reasonable cause, end quote. They must obtain warrants to search vehicles. The quota provision allows for access to land for border security. Other provisions are exploited for analog security in the region, particularly the Fifth Amendment, which enables the government to use private land for public works, for example, to build the border wall under eminent domain. So again, they can put cameras on people's land, whether they want to or not, right? They also don't have to get warrants, right? Like, they don't have to do all of this stuff because you have 8 USC 1357, which allows to prevent, quote unquote, the entry of illegal aliens into the United States. So because of that, they can do reasonable searches without reasonable cause, right? So that changes the relationship that people who live within that 100 miles or who have to go into that 100-mile zone a lot, like myself. I had to that changes your relationship to the law and how you see it, right? So that's another thing to keep in mind.
Days ago, a group was beaten and robbed by armed men at this very spot.
And this is the thing, is the more you militarize the border, the more dangerous it becomes for the people who want to cross said, invisible line in the middle of the river, right? Because there is no difference to a bird or to a butterfly or to, a fish, that side of the river or this side of the river. Only for human beings, there's this invisible line that has to be upheld, right? And so, again, the more you militarize the border and the more it has, the more dangerous it gets. And so, like the U.S. border region, I mean, there are so many people who just cease to be because nobody knows their name, nobody knows that they've passed, and they're just there, right? Like, they receive no dignity, right? Their bodies are just there, and they just, all that's left are bones, right? You think it's like snow, and then it turns out that they're actually bones,
No one knows anything. There isn't even a bridge there. There's one further on. That's very far, very far.
Oh, it is not well known at all, and it is particularly meant because it was added as an addendum to the Immigration Act, right? So because they did that, right, and people are all against the Immigration Act, right, even though it's what allows them to police the border the way they do, that's the reason why they will never do anything to it. Like, they like to blame it for all of its whatever, but it's what enables them to do the searches and the seizures and all of that stuff without a warrant. So that's why they will never get rid of it. But people don't know.
Okay, let's try it over there. All clear?
Yes, it's quiet.
Señor.
And look at all this pollution that this causes, right? Like, by having this invisible line, right? Like, then you also destroy so much of the environment as well. And I don't want to just keep pausing because we're only a minute 30 seconds in, but there's just so much that I'm just like, look at the river, right? It's like the health of the river is damaged by this invisible line, in the middle of it, right? Hi, Schmeggly. Hi, good for Gabby. Oh, look at the poor baby. Look at her.
On the other side of the Rio Grande lies the United States. After weeks of traveling, they managed to cross illegally. It's just a handful of...
Why do you have to say... Okay. The crossing, in fact, Elise, someone who knows immigration law very well, who I had interviewed prior on my stream, told me and told the stream that even under U.S. immigration law, there is no such thing as an illegal immigrant, right? That's just a rhetorical thing, right, that people use. There is no real such thing in law. And this, why even add the word illegal to it? They crossed. That's all they did. They crossed, right? Like, how are you doing? Good for Gabby. I hope all is well.
People today. But it's not always like that.
And look, another thing too is you see that pickup right there? They're not doing it to hide and blah blah blah, and they're not coming from, they're doing it because they want to be processed under asylum. They're seeking asylum because of what the United States does and continues to do throughout all of Latin America. Right? So, like, that is why they're willing to cross right in front of this truck. Right? Like that's the thing people don't understand. They think, that they're hiding somewhere. Like this weird thing. And it's like, no. Literally, people want to be, quote unquote, caught. Oh, yes, of course. Here, let me turn them on.
In the winter of 2023-2024, there was chaos at the border between Mexico and the US. Snaking lines of women and men carrying children in their arms, making their way across the border.
We just want to work, to pay taxes and send money back to our families. In Venezuela, they're dying of hunger.
We don't want to do anyone any harm. We just want a future. There's nothing for...
And again, like, what caused Venezuela to be like what it is right now? The United States literally putting it under this huge embargo. Again, I am not gonna... Oh my goodness, we gotta redeem. What did we get? Oh, thank you so much, Omega Star, for the tier 1 sub to Neuro Riot. Appreciate that. Other types of immigration. They are seeking asylum, which is their legal right. And yeah, exactly. And there are other types of immigration as well. But, like, the United States likes to has created new categories ever since particularly 65, right? To make it seem as though, this is why, even in Europe, right, they will use this language, right? Oh, well, they're economic migrants. Even asylum seekers have to get jobs. By definition, right? Like, in a capitalist world, right, you have to get a job in order to have money, right? But they want to create that differentiation, right? Because it's a way to sort of obfuscate the fact that the people that are coming to Europe, right, are almost always, right, there because of what Europe and the United States do in the, Southwest Asia, North Africa, etc., right? So...
At the peak of the crisis, up to 10,000 people crossed the border each day.
We've been on the road for a month now. It's hell.
In March 2024, scuffles broke out at the border, like here in El Paso in Texas. Law enforcement seemed completely overwhelmed. Authorities estimate that some 2 million people enter the US illegally.
Look at that guy. That was a soldier. That was not like, oh, that's just some patrol guy. That's a soldier, right? So, that's why, when they try to make you have sympathy with the border guard or whatever, it's like, well, it's a soldier that has essentially the license to do whatever they want, right? Literally whatever they want, including having shot and murdered someone across the border and gotten away with it, right? Because the United States got to adjudicate that, not Mexico. So, what do you, that doesn't, showing that is part of that, scare tactic, and to hierarchify. Yeah, no, I get what you mean. The immigrants, they love to do that, sort of people of value and worth. Right, exactly. That's the reason why they always like to give us, that's why they like to always give model, quote unquote, model minority stories, right? But if you look much, into it, they were already wealthy from the get-go, and then they just came to the United States, right? That's a very common thing, right? Vivek Ramaswamy, for example, right? And look at this. Imagine this is where you have to stay. This does not look comfortable, right? You have train cars here, a railway bridge here, a huge road, and a highway. Like, this is not hospitable. I don't know. Look, there are people that can sleep through a lot of things. But if you have children, like if you have babies, and you got freight trains and, 18-wheelers going past you all the time, and you're just there in this field, you're not going to get a lot of sleep. I'm just saying. Not only not comfortable, yeah, it doesn't look safe either. I mean, they're literally just lining them up, leading them into these weird rows, and there's no protection from the outside. You know what I mean? Like, that's another thing, is that Jody Melamed talks about this in her book about diversity, where she talks about how, like, by devaluing certain lives, right, that is a way of exerting power as well, right? And so by putting these asylum seekers in such a state where they can be so easily harmed, right, even from bad actors, like just civilians, right, it shows you how low, right, they have devalued them, and that is racialization, being done onto them, right? Like, that is them being othered as such, right? So
Each year, in 2023, it was a record-breaking 2.4 million. Some regard that as an invasion and blame the Biden administration. Others say it's due to the growing security crisis in South and Central America and elsewhere.
Why do they act like those two things are of equal weight? Like, some think it's an invasion, but some other people think that it's, and then they state something that, like, there's actual facts, right? Like, that's just ridiculous. And, like, this is even, like, and now that they've zoomed in, it's like, yeah, they literally just have soldiers here and, like, this armored truck with this thing, this armored vehicle, right? And they're just sitting there in lines. Like, I don't know, this looks horrifying to me personally, right? Like, again, this is not hospitable, right? Like, especially if you've just been, like, this makes the outburst that they showed earlier to kind of scaremonger, right, to fearmonger, not like, again, if you see it in a vacuum, people will be like, oh, that's bad. But when you see everything around it, then you can see why people would be upset, right? Why they might, do that. So.
But one thing is certain. A few months before US voters go to the polls, the border is a big issue in the election campaign. In a town close to San Diego in California, the candidates are trying to woo potential voters.
And then, I have some white ones.
Oh my god.
I'll go ahead, you can put yours down first.
Who has anybody seen the ads for this person? For Bill Wells? If you're in SoCal, have y'all seen the ads for this dude? They're, I don't know, or maybe I'm confusing him with someone else, but they're very cringe. Like, really cringe. Some people claim the earth is flat. It doesn't mean that's relevant for the shape of the earth. Right, exactly.
In November, Americans will be voting for members of Congress as well as a new president.
Oh, Congress, sorry. Yeah.
Bill Wells is standing for the Republicans.
Hey, Bill, how you doing, man? Nice to meet you.
He aims to become a senator.
My wife, Betty.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Well, thanks.
Big sport.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Okay, now that y'all have seen, like, for those of you that are in SoCal, y'all have seen his commercials or his ads, right? Like, I hope I'm not the only one that thinks that they're cringe. Everybody else is like, oh, I love his ads. They're the best ads ever. Like,
The candidates have to fund their campaign from private donations. Everyone is expected to dig deep into their pockets this evening before the speeches and debates kick off.
Everyone knows it. Do you like to write a check or do a credit card? Yeah, I'm going to do a credit card. How much was it?
wait, is that Jimmy Dore in the corner? Do y'all see that? Right there on the TV? Like, it looks like someone's tuning in. It looks like Jimmy Dore. I don't know. At least to me, as someone who doesn't really know Jimmy Dore very well, like, has never really watched him, has only seen him, like, third hand, that that kind of looks like him to me anyway. But hey, look, if you if you want to donate money, you can always come. Like, this is so standard SoCal, like, restaurants, like these things, the trees. It's like these things, and I don't even know why they make them just like triangular. Like, I don't know. Anyway, I don't want to.
I'm so excited that you're here tonight. It means a lot. You can clap. It's okay. The big question right now is the border. The border's out of control. Almost 20 million people coming across the border. Most of them, we don't know who they are, why they're here, what they're going to do. And
I hate when they say we don't know who they are. It's like, they will tell you who they are. I mean, that's the point of the asylum process, right? Like, that's the whole point. Like I never understood this one talking point. We don't know who they are. Well, you don't know any stranger that you see along the street either. That doesn't mean that, that means you have to leave town. You know what I mean? It's like, logically speaking, that doesn't make any sense. But they like to say it because, it's that stranger danger response, right? But it's just like, of course, we, whoever we is, right, don't know who they are, right? But again, that's what people do. They have to, and they do bring documentation, right? And in fact, that's often what's stolen, right? Like that's some of the stuff that people have lost their lives for, because, like, if they have some documentation that they can use for other purposes, right? There are bad actors that will try to steal that, right? But generally speaking, the whole point of starting the process of the immigration process is they know your name, they know your nationality, they know, that's what they do. That's how you get to know them.
Believe me, the repercussions from what we've seen in the last 3 years will last for the rest of our lifetimes. And we've got to deal with that. But the first thing we have to do is stop the flow of illegal immigrants coming into our nation. We have to do it right away. And we don't have very much time left. We need to do it in this election.
The number of 20 million illegal border crossings cannot be verified, but the people here are convinced by the election pitch.
Joe Biden has said...
I mean, that's it. I mean, they're just convinced by the pitch, right? Because it hits all of their, like, things that they want to hear. Oh, there's millions of unknown people, right, that they have no idea, we have no idea where they're from, blah blah blah, which is a complete lie. Oh my goodness gracious. Oh, thank you Paul Squall, thank you so much for the subscription at tier 1. Welcome in. But yeah, it's one second here. Okay. Yes, borders aren't real. People are real. Exactly. And also, like, isn't this restaurant, like, super basic too? Like, I don't know. Maybe it's just me, but it's just like, it's just got that vibe. Okay. Anyway.
And anybody can come, and there's absolutely no waiting period whatsoever. It takes actually 5 minutes to come in and fill out some paperwork and be released. And that makes people feel like
they're
going to take away their...
That is not true. I wish that anything government took 5 minutes. What government office is it, right, that what government office is it that lets you get out in 5 minutes? Because, like, when you got to go to the DMV in California, everybody has to take the whole day off, because you're there for hours. You wait in line to wait in another line. Like, that's how it works. There's just so many people. It's just, ugh.
Borders, their language, their culture, and we're going to lose the essence of what makes America America.
Their borders. What borders? Like, I don't understand. Like, their personal borders. Like, where do you, like, that they get to set their personal borders, I guess. So if they set it at Panama, right, or Costa Rica, right, because I remember, Paul Squall, I remember that you had mentioned, something about don't you like travel to Costa Rica, Paul Squall? That like, oh well, that now is the border. Like I just okay, fine. Their language, no, literally everybody learns. Like nobody that I know that lives in my really Mexican neighborhood, right, does not know how to speak some English. And they all, what do they all tell their kids? Tienes que aprender inglés. You have to learn English. Tienes que platicar inglés bien. You have to speak English well. Like that is the rule. Like you have to. Yeah, I don't know what happened. It's like acting weird, but Twitch has been acting weird all day. So because it was acting weird for Irene earlier. Borders aren't people. Yeah. I have a condo in Costa Rica. I will escape to when fascism matures here. Yes. Well, I mean, you know. Well, but like, and their culture. What culture? What culture? Like, okay, like literally, like okay, I've been to Simi Valley. I don't know what culture you're talking about. Like, I don't know.
Between souvenir snapshots and free cocktails, the border problem is what everyone's talking about. Most people here support Donald Trump right down the line.
I think Donald Trump recognized the problem many years ago, and he tapped right into what everybody knew. And so
this is such a look. Like, there are so many, like, SoCal, like, right-wing, like, you know, like, middle-aged women, right, that are, like, very, very transphobic, very, just, like, all of these, you know, and this is their look right here. Like, even the glasses, like, everything. Like, I've seen them, like... I'm
a very big America First Republican. I don't like Republicans that allow the other side that always surrender.
So yeah, so just repeating, you know, Nazi sympathizer Charles Lindbergh, you know, his whole little shtick, America First. But okay.
So I like an America First, La Mesa First Republican. It's all about
La Mesa First. Oh my god. Their language, their culture. You literally live in La Mesa. La Mesa. I am primarily following you out of beard jealousy. Your mustache and beard are very luxurious. Oh, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I was like kind of having well, I won't go into it, but just like, you know, this deciding whether or not I should even, because I know people often, you know, misgender because of that, but oh well. But yeah, like La Mesa First. I'm sorry, just like to literally say La Mesa First in San Diego County, just like okay, lady.
our family first before it's about outsiders.
The Republican candidate.
Outsiders? You literally live in La Mesa. You live in La Mesa. You live in La Mesa, California. Like lady. Like, that she says this without losing a beat. Did she not hear that? It's not English. Yeah, she's like, oh yeah, La Mesa, you know, just like, you know, the, like, named after the, you know, very scenic English village of La Mesa. And El Centro. Oh my gosh, it's just, oh gosh. But this is like every restaurant in SoCal right now. I don't know why they all got their benches and they're these type of high chairs, but like if you visit SoCal, like this is what you're gonna get. Like 7 out of 9 restaurants.
Has managed to drum up quite a lot of support at the event. Dollars and votes for his anti-immigration line.
Well, now I know where not to go.
Pacumba Hot Springs in Southern California, not far from the Mexican border. In this corner of the United States, which seems like the end of the world, many people regard migrants...
Why does it... Who says that? Who says that? Why does it feel like the end of the world? Okay, I have heard many things about the border, but I have never heard that. Feels like the end of the world. Maybe to you. I'm sorry, but like when you're going towards Tijuana, like that's where all the fun stuff is at. That like, which seems like the end of I know, what a weird thing to say. Who says that? I mean, I know white people say, but it's just like, like, come on. And it literally says, "Be nice or leave."
Cross illegally, not as criminals, but as people in need.
There are like over 150 people in Moon. A lot of Africans, Chad, Angola.
All right.
Yeah, bye.
Gabriella and Sam are Quakers, a religious movement that advocates a simple life and showing generosity and compassion towards others.
Oh, look at the kitty. Oh. And the super. So this group, okay, I think I don't know if I've heard of them before, but I have heard that there are like, is it the Friends Society of San Diego or something like that? That it's Quakers, and that they will provide food to refugees and everything. And they often are looking for people to be interpreters, on a volunteer basis. But yeah, I think it's the Quaker Society of San Diego. But yeah, like if people come from francophone countries, I mean, I'm just, I'm not recommending anything, right? I'm just saying that there are organizations that, hey, if you know how to speak another language and you want to help, you can always do that. Because like I speak French, so I've always, helped when it came in Mexico to like Haitian immigrants, right, etc., or refugees in Mexico City. But
They're part of an initiative that collects money and food and distributes the donations among the people regularly arriving in their neighborhood.
My motivations are very straightforward humanitarian. There are women and children sitting in the dirt with no water and no food and no shelter. And that's
exactly. I mean, we literally saw them sitting in rows. Like that just stood out to me, and like the fact that they're red and they're just sitting there. Like, there's this scene in Who Crossed Illegally but Not as Criminals. Yeah, then what does illegal mean? Exactly. That's such a good point. You're right. It just means bad. Yeah, exactly. It just means bad. Like, that's literally all it means, because it makes no sense if they don't think. It's like if they don't attribute it that meaning, then it doesn't mean anything. But yeah, like it's almost like imaginary lines on a map aren't real. Right, exactly. And like you can tell how imaginary they are when you go to a place like Tijuana and the border between Tijuana and Segura. Like, there's no reason for there to be like the huge border fence right there. Like, it does nothing. It just like, like they have the restrooms, they have the coffee, the like camper style coffee pot. Oh wow, look at that. His jacket has interesting.
the end of the story to me. I don't support or not support migration on any level at all. It's just I don't like to see people in need. And you saw they're in need. Don't you think?
I'm myself an immigrant, so I welcome all the immigrants because I know how hard it is to be able to take food, to be accepted, to be loved.
And she says that as someone who, it's not illegal to exist and seek a better, safe life. Right. That's the reason why as soon as they begin to say, oh, they're economic migrants, what does that even mean? Like, because I especially hear that more commonly now in the United States. But like in Europe, that's always been a thing I've always heard, right? Where they try to say, oh, well, they're not refugees, they're economic migrants, right? Like in the UK, they'll say this. But it's like, hello, Eric's Blue, welcome in. It's so nice to see you. And then they will say it, but all it's meant to do is to divide and to try to classify people. So that way they'll be like, well, we accept asylum seekers, but only true asylum seekers, right? Oh, no worries. You're totally fine, Eric's. and then use that, right, as like to concern troll, right, as the kids say, right, to then, right, label more and more people economic, because even asylum seekers have to get jobs. I mean, they don't really get anything for free, right? Because like whilst they're waiting for their trials, right, for the asylum process, they still have to live somewhere, right? They have to have, you have to have a constant address, right? Because you can't get any of the social safety nets that, you know, the United States barely has. You know, you have to do all these things, right? And they can still deny you, right? So there are some similarities in the language used in this topic and the topic of so-called right, because that too was also not real, right? Like that was created because people knew that that is a racialized phrase, right? Like when people say that term, right? That's like when people say that term, they are thinking of someone not who is white, who are the majority recipients by proportion and by number of welfare, right? But they think of someone who is black, right? A black woman in particular, right? And same thing with illegal, right? With all of this stuff, it's, you know, and like this is a person who, again, even though they are an immigrant, right? They have perhaps received far less discrimination because of the fact that they're white, at least ostensibly speaking, right? And yet she still says, like, I still want to have that solidarity with other immigrants, right? Because, you know, because there are a lot of people that pull up the ladder, right? Like, oh, I got in, okay, I don't care about anybody else, right? That is very frustrating to me. Very, very frustrating.
Gabriella had told us beforehand that talking politics was off limits, which we accepted. But Sam was less restrained.
The policy is the wealthy people in this country that control this country, the majority of those people want there to be cheap illegal labor in the United States. They want this. So it continues to happen because nothing happens in the United States without the wealthy people writing off on it. Now,
he's right. Like, he's right. He's right. I don't know where he's going to go with it because it could vary. Because, like, yes, it is true that they want the cheap labor, right, from the imperialized world to, right? And it is true that it is the capitalists that sign off on everything. I just really hope he doesn't, you know, like, I don't want it to be like, oh, you really had us in the first half, not gonna lie, right? You know, like, so far, Sam is okay, but
if they want it to stop for some reason, it'll stop. Until then, the politics of Donald Trump and Joe Biden and all of that, it's just blah, blah, blah.
yes, he's absolutely okay. Yes, that's correct. Yes, if they wanted to stop the embargo on Venezuela and, you know, whatever, like get rid of all the restrictions they have and stop stealing their assets. Same thing with Iran, right? Like, Iran is only pushed more to the brink of starting a war if you keep taking their money. I mean, you know, like, desperation doesn't exactly, like, I don't see why anybody would think that places who are experiencing immense desperation and destitution, right, by way of the United States and the Western imperialist powers, right, that somehow it's in their best interest to, like, I don't know, it's just a weird line that they have on that. So far, so good. Yeah, my Irish ancestors came to America as, and were not white, quote unquote. They were no better than anyone else coming here seeking a better life. Destitution does not the best bedfellows make, right? Because, again, when people are desperate, right, that's what causes them to traverse an entire continent with their children in tow, right? Like the people that are trying to make it to the United States that have to walk from Venezuela all the way up to Piedras Negras or to El Paso or whatever it is, they're not doing it for fun. Like, I don't know why people, like, Like, they're not traveling, right? Like, every single time, every single night, they are made extremely vulnerable. Every single night, right? I mean, and during the day too, right? Yeah, road trip. It's like, no, it's not a road trip. People that walk here from Honduras are doing way, way more to be American than I ever did. I mean, and not only that, oh my goodness. Hello, Ferret King. Welcome in. 17 months. Oh my goodness. Thank you so much for your subscription. I appreciate it. So, yeah, like, I just don't understand why crossing an entire continent somehow is like, oh, they did it for fun, right? It's the same thing when it comes to, for example, and I know this is a bit of a, but when it comes to the discussion about abortion, right? Like, people don't do those things for fun, right? Like this isn't a, but again, I recognize that that's a bit different, but.
Hey, John.
Bye-bye.
A few kilometers away lies Moon, a makeshift camp. Some 100 people arrived here during the night. Gabriela.
Okay, so this is just like the place that I mentioned before, right? Where there's like a camp built, but there's one that's sponsored by the UCSD, right? The University of California, San Diego. And it has a professor that goes there. I think they got a grant from the from some NGO or something to do it, but or at least to start it. I don't know if it still requires anyway, that's not the point. The point being that they have a tent, right, where people also can even sleep, right, and where they can allow for people have no idea, full of nicks, have no idea at all. So then that way, like, if they were being followed by a coyote or something, right, that then they can, like, de-escalate and have the people, like, separate from that, right? So they're actively trying to reduce the violence on the border, right, which is very hard to do, again, because the more you militarize it, the more dangerous you make it. That means that the pricing and all of that stuff, right, for the coyotes and etc., all of the human traffickers, right, it goes up. Like, their incentive to do it goes up and up, right, because the prices go up, because each crossing now is, what I mean. So where before it might have taken 10,000, now it's almost like it's a lot. I don't know the prices, but it's a lot of money for just one person. In fact, I remember reading Carla Cornejos' book, Undocumented Americans, which is a really good book. I recommend it. It's one of those creative nonfiction works. But she talks about how when she was a baby, her parents, in order for them to immigrate to the United States, or to pay their way to get to the United States, they had to leave her as the collateral while they went to the United States and worked to make the money, so then that way they could get back their daughter. I mean, really think about that for a second, right? I know that sounds like people really want to blame the parents. I understand that. But again, they were so desperate that their only choice was to literally leave their baby daughter as collateral, and then to go to the this is, again, immiseration does not make people right. If the situation wasn't so bad, right, you wouldn't see people doing such things on such a scale, right? But the more people deny it, right, and Donald Trump does this to such a point where everything he says is just like a denial of U.S. imperialism, right? Even though he affirms it in many ways too. But I'll just never forget that part. I was a literal. Oh yeah. Well, I mean, I feel for you, Pascal. That's. empathize with you with that, because that's, it's not easy. And like with Carla, I mean, who knows what could have happened, right? Like her parents went there trusting the people, right? Like who knows, right? And instead, she became a people do what they have to do. Exactly. And boy, will they do it, right? Like they will do literally whatever they have to do. And that's the worst thing, is that you can see it in people's eyes, right? When that they have to do something so egregious that they have never wanted to ever do before, but they have to do it, right? It's just, I don't know, it's sad.
That gives food to the women first.
How long did you travel?
2 months. Oh my gosh. Did you walk a lot? Yes. Oh. We don't have enough for all the people. This is a lot what we have today. We haven't seen in months. So many. From all over the world, as you see. Syria, we have Syria, Guatemala, then Colombia, Ecuador.
And then look right there is Border Patrol. Like right behind them is just Border Patrol just chilling right there. And like I know, oh my gosh, I know where this is. Like this is like I know exactly where this is.
Yeah. And Peru, so everybody. Indian. We have Indian today. Now let's see.
Mujeres. Solo mujeres.
I understand people from America, they are scared too, I mean.
She even learned Spanish. Like she even learned Spanish. That, like, again, even something as simple as learning the language of the marginalized people around you. That is a huge way to show solidarity, I will say. At least in my book, right? Like being able, because then that allows you to, be there for them and for them to be there for you, right? In a way that you kind of can't when you don't have, when you can't relate in that way. Si se puede, in my book as well. Yeah, si se puede, si se puede.
There's this mass on people coming in. I don't condemn anyone who says anything. You see, this is all, of course it's emotion and it is a fear,
Una pila. Where are you from? Where you from? 3 days ago, this camp was practically empty in the mornings. 2 days ago, we had about 110 people. Today,
I like how he just says "Welcome to America." Like I mean, you know what I mean? Like that, like something like to me, that's just like that's all they need. That's all they really want to hear, right? They don't want to hear, like at the end of the day, right? Like they want some food and something, right? They don't want, but instead what usually ends up happening is, like once they do find some shelter, right, once they do find a place, then what people want is, right, like that's what they think about, right? Like that's what the people that obsess over the border dream about, right? Or the Border Patrol raids, right? And it's just so strange to me. Like I don't know. Like I don't know.
we have about 130 people. It's obviously building up here again. I don't know why. It's all controlled by what's happening on the Mexican side of the border. And we have no control over that. There's Mexican law enforcement, cartel activity, you name it. And impossible to really know what's going to happen until it happens.
Sam.
Well, that is, I mean, I do understand what Sam is saying, that, like, in terms of, like, amount of people crossing as such, right? Like, oh, if so many people cross today, sure. But I think to focus on the Mexican government as the only arbiter, and the cartels as the only arbiter of, like, why there's an increase of people is very short-sighted. Because obviously it's not, Mexico that is. But yeah, I mean, this is the reason why, like, to me, all of the efforts to try to get their documentation prepared, right? Like this was a push that was done by some organizations like the Comisión Nacional de los Derechos Humanos, and in fact that organization I just said, like whenever they have commercials for it in Mexico, and it has like a little jingle with its full name because they have to say the full name in Spanish. But anyway, but it's the National Commission for Human Rights, and they were doing a thing where they would like fill out like essentially the immigration form for Mexico, but just so that way they would have their documentation ready for when they reach the United States. But then, politics, so.
A carpenter by trade has built some shelters and a water tank because migrants keep gathering here. This is just a few kilometers away from a mountainous region where the border wall ends and it's easier to cross.
Again, this is why building a wall is like, it can't go straight up a mountain. Like there are some peaks where it's just like almost at a 90-degree angle. Like there's no, like you're not going to build a wall going up at a 90-degree angle and then across. Like, you know what I mean? Like this isn't like a video game. I don't know.
This is an information sheet about what we know is going to happen to them, contact information if they get separated from their families, basically a little bit of a rundown about what's going to happen to them in the next, while they're being detained.
See, like that's, and I like, see, they even have it in different languages. That's so smart. Like this is good praxis, right? Again, knowing the way, like knowing what's going to happen, by actually giving it to them, not in English, right, but in their own language, right, giving them what they need, the basics to survive, etc. I mean, if more people could contribute, right, imagine how much more, comfort that they could afford, right? But even even learning something as simple as your neighbor's language goes a very long way. I'm telling you.
All of the people here want to apply for political asylum. United States Border Patrol are taking them to a detention center for interview. Afterwards, some of them will be deported. Others will be summoned to appear before a judge. This process can take a year. During this time, they're free to remain at liberty in the US. Under Donald Trump, the mood was very different.
Like, look at what this wall does, right? Or this fence, whatever you want to call it. Like, look at what it does to the physical terrain. Like, it literally cuts through it. Like, it's so unnatural, right? Like, not even the fence itself, but like everything, because they have to be able to have their trucks here, right? So this has to be kept, they have to put all of these herbicides and pesticides on it, etc., right? So that way nothing grows here, right? And it needs to be as light of a color as possible, so that way they can blah, 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 right? It's just...
The billionaire and then president pledged that he would make the border with Mexico, which stretches across more than 3,000 kilometers, impenetrable. Right after taking office, he announced plans for a border wall costing billions of dollars and a tightening of security measures. Then COVID came along and served as a pretext for systematic deportations, also for asylum seekers.
Oh, wow. I mean, this is something that actually has a historical basis, where people in the 1930s, after the 1924 Immigration Act in particular, but it particularly was a thing in the 30s, where they used typhus outbreaks as the justification for deportations that eventually led to mass deportations of Mexicans, U.S. citizens or not. Some of them actually went to trial and ended up in the Supreme Court, but most of this is, not even talked about. Like, the amount of people, we don't know the exact number, because, again, this was in the 30s. Some people were literally just rounded up and just driven across the border, so we don't know, right? They weren't exactly being they didn't really care to write everything down. They just wanted people to leave, because a lot of the thought was during the Great Depression was, oh, there are no jobs, so if we take the people that do have jobs and deport them, then there will be jobs. Like, that doesn't, you know what I mean? Like, that doesn't make sense, but that logic still is used to this day, right? That's literally the they took our jobs logic, just in the 30s. And people estimate it was over 1 million people, right? And it could be as much as 2 million. Again, whether or not they were citizens. So being born in the United States, having the paperwork, all of that stuff did not matter at all. Same after the same after the Chinese Exclusion Act, same with the Irish after the Chinese Exclusion Act is the first actual like immigration legislation in the United States. Like, prior to that, there was no like such thing as that, right? Like, I know there are people that will say, oh well, there's this act that stops blah blah blah, but that wasn't like an immigration law, right? Like, on a national scale, right? The Chinese Exclusion Act is the first one that's like in the history of if we're talking about immigration and border studies. Again, like, that's also discussed a little bit in here too, because oh yeah, and in fact here in the very beginning of the introduction, they talk about the idea of the quote unquote marauding migrants, right? But the point was that the National Border Patrol Council tries to, right, project the valence of a quote figure of the migrant as an abstract menace, end quote, right? Like, that's what they do, right? And I think that wording is quite apt, I would say, for when Camilla writes this, because that is, right, it's abstract, it's an invasion. What are you talking about, right? Like, but yeah, so.
But the illegal crossings continued as Mexican people smugglers.
There they go again. Like, after talking to the people that say it's not illegal, it's just a crossing.
They're called coyotes, confirm. Tio used to be one of them. He helped hundreds of illegal migrants enter the United States, in particular during Donald Trump's presidency.
He tightened up the law. He kept on extending the wall, and he said he was going to deport all Mexican migrants. It was more difficult to smuggle migrants over the border, with all that increased surveillance. The crossings were more difficult. But I got a whole load of people across.
Oh, you know what's also weird too? Theo, I love the alias. Yeah, Theo. Well, what's your name? Oh, Theo. Yeah, you know. So, like, a lot of this rhetoric that is used, like the fact that they keep saying illegal, right, reminds me of when Camilla says, the threat that justifies the logic of preemption, right? Like, even if there were, like, even when during COVID there were no people, like, being allowed into the United States, that didn't stop the rhetoric of, you know what I mean? Like, that didn't stop the rhetoric of all of that stuff, right? And everything is always in this idea of, like, we have to be prepared, right? And it's in that preemption, right, that can go on forever, right? It's not to meet a actual, like, to actually deal with a problem, because then the problem can be, you know, solved, so to speak. But it's to say there will be a problem, or the problem is coming, you know what I mean? It's something that will happen, right? But one thing I want to also highlight is when Camilla Foja says, this moment reveals the ideological, and I'm quoting her now, the ideological imaginary of the border optic from the global north in which migrants enact violence on agents of the state. Yet the history of the borderlands is not one of an injured state, but of genocide, of migrants' death by U.S. policy and institutions, and ongoing white supremacist vigilante and border patrol and police violence. So that's That's the actual violence, right? Like when they say invasion, when they use all of those things, they're confessing to what they are doing, right? Not to what the migrants are doing, right? And one thing too is that they like to play to the imagination, right? Again, to that logic of preemption, because like thinking about this right here, right? Like haunting this scene, right? Again, quoting Camilla, is the migrant as a ghostly apparition, an invisible force discursively produced along intersecting gender and racialized lines that trace the contours of the mythic Mexican bandit, right? So this goes back to like the way how Mexican people were portrayed even in like the days of black and white film, right? Oh yeah, I stream too. I just, do history stuff, so a bit different.
They jumped over the wall by the canal, or the airport, more or less anywhere.
We shot this footage in 2019, during Donald Trump's term in office, in the area where Tio used to work.
Oh my gosh, like my anxiety just rose like hearing them talk, like oh my god.
It's always possible to get around border control somehow and get the migrants across.
Oh no. Oh my god, this is so...
This policy was just a lot of hot air.
Trump's policy?
Yes, it didn't have any real results. It didn't have any impact.
Oh good to see.
It did. The result was that we people smugglers raised our prices. We asked the migrants for more money.
Yeah, chinga la
The only
migra.
thing that worked out well. It's an endless story.
See? It's exactly what I said. I literally said this. The only thing that the militarization of the border did was one, well, he didn't say this, but Theo didn't say this, but it made it more dangerous. Like, by far, it's now more dangerous than it ever has been. More people are, I mean, again, we don't even know how many people perish along the border because some of these places where people are forced to cross are so inaccessible because they're trying not to get caught, right, by the border patrol and DHS, et cetera, right? But what people don't often understand is that this was done by intent, right? Like before the border wall and the way in which current immigration policy is like. Before, people would go through the urban route, which is they would go to Tijuana, go to San Isidro, which is still the most cross-border crossing in the world, land crossing anyway, and then they would cross over into San Diego, right? Like, more or less. I mean, it technically crosses into San Isidro, California, but you know what I mean. That used to be the typical way, because before, they would just ask you, what nationality are you, this or this, and then inscribe you, right? Now you don't have that. Now you can't just cross, right? Now instead you have to push people out further and further and further afield until now they have what's called the Devil's Highway, right? Luis Alberto Urrea wrote a book about this, and also he's from Tijuana as well. And so hello Choquino Ashes, welcome in. And he is talking about that particular route, which is the most dangerous border crossing route in the world, right? That's how bad it is, right? So, like, what you saw right now, like, yeah, it seemed easy, right, quote unquote, for some people, but obviously it's not, right? There's so much that can go wrong, but again, the danger has only escalated, and that only benefits, like, human traffickers, right? So,
and it's one that won't stop. Even if they erect a tower there, a huge wall, people will overcome it somehow.
And yet the life of people smugglers and Tio's life has changed in recent years, not because of US politics, but because of the drug cartels. Control of the area is now in their hands. The people smugglers can only work with their say-so and are forced to give them half their earnings. Or pay...
I mean, again, like that's another thing, right? Like, when I, like, in Tijuana, like, everybody knows, right? Like, there are certain, I won't say them, though. Like, I won't go into detail, right? Like, oh, this or this, like, in terms of people, right? Because it doesn't matter. Like, this was years ago anyway. But, like, of, like, oh, like, because a lot of Sinaloenses, people from Sinaloa, which is a state in Mexico that's kind of known for its drug cartel, a lot of people moved to Tijuana. It used to kind of be in there, that used to kind of be, but they also had their own drug cartel that existed in Tijuana. And so, like, when the war on drugs, quote unquote, started, right, when I was growing up in Tijuana, like, it just meant, like, there were days where I literally couldn't go to school because the main road, you know, going into town was like, oh yeah, they're having a shootout, and so, you know, you just can't go to school. So, you know, then I would just, like, be at home. So that was fun. But no, but the thing is that, like, you know, this isn't new, right? Like, whether the coyotes were able to be more independent in the past is, you know, a whole different thing. But now the ensconcing of cartel's power has happened due to, again, the militarization of the border, because then it has to be met with you know, I don't want to use the Newtonian phrase of an equal and opposite reaction, but you know what I mean, right? Like if they're using weapons, you know, that are tested on Palestinians, which also Camilla's book goes into, then the cartels are really the only force that can also match that, right? So then they end up having... I tried to find you before, Shex, but Narwhal just dropped it in NTC. Oh. Thank you. Yeah, it's very famous. Yeah, the Sinaloa cartel. Yeah.
A much higher price.
The men from the cartel came and made them disappear. I cannot afford to be seen by them with you. They are everywhere. They've got scouts. They keep an eye on everyone.
Oh my gosh. You know what's so sad too is, like, as a kid, and if you're different in some way, right? And I'm Jewish, right? So, you know, that's obviously a difference, right? It's like any little difference that you have that makes you stand out from other people, like, really makes you people are very paranoid in Tijuana, sadly, because of that, right? Because they're afraid of, oh, they don't want to cross, right? Or, you know, cross somebody, because then it's, you know, it wasn't, but yeah, like especially when they have kids being the scouts, like, that was always just, to me, that was always the worst part, like, if they were children, because I would always say, like, you know, don't, you know, but, yeah.
So they can keep people smuggling under their control. Some of us stopped. We wanted to stop. We were too afraid of them turning up at our doors, doing something to our families, or blowing everything up. Others kept on people smuggling, but they get to them, and the next thing you know, they're dead. They burn their bodies on the spot, or throw them into the canal.
Never underestimate the U.S.'s willingness to harm children. Oh yeah, like, never underestimate that. Never think that the amount would drug legalization change this situation. I mean, in many ways, yes, but also decriminalization, right? Like not just, you want to make it so that it doesn't just benefit the bourgeoisie, right? Because that's, like, one of the things that, like, with in some cases, they will legalize something, or rather, they will legalize something, but then the only people that can, like, have the dispensaries or have the access to it, et cetera, in the first place, are very wealthy people, right? And then that creates another imbalance, right? Because they might not, you know. So it would be decriminalization and legalization. So, because like in Mexico, they've done that in some respects, but obviously, Mexico is not the destination country, right? It's a transit country. Only recently has Mexico become a consumer country, and even then, it's still at a very small amount. The United States is the consumer of the world, right? Like when it comes to drugs, it doesn't matter where you are in the world. Like the United States just consumes more drugs than everybody else. Like it's literally that. Like we all know that one. We all know that one person, right? That's like always at the club, right? At the desert raves and in the airline hangars. That's always at them. That somehow knows where they are, and they know everybody, right? Like it's just, yeah. I can't wrap my head around living in a gun culture. I spent time when I was young in South Africa, which is full of guns. Oh yeah, there's a lot of that, and a lot of that is also to do with colonialism, right? Like in Zuid-Afrika, right? That's for sure. I wasn't there long enough to seep in. Roads were wild. Yeah. Like that is that is the strange thing where like America, guns are everywhere. In Mexico, guns aren't everywhere, right? Like it doesn't mean people don't have them, but it's not as big of a thing because they're either used in. Oh, you're in the UK now? Okay. Like they're either used, typically they're associated with people that live in rural areas, right? Not with people that live in cities. In America, it doesn't matter. Like cities, rural areas, suburban areas, it doesn't matter. Everybody has them. You can see the same thing with weed. Like where's the restorative justice to people? Right, exactly. Where they did a bid and were on parole for 3 years, right? Just for having a little tree on you. Exactly. That is the reason why decriminalization has to come first, or it has to be part of that legalization, right? That like all of the convictions have to be evacuated, and they cannot remain on their records either, because that is another thing where they will evacuate it, right? But they still have it listed as, oh well they still did a stint. Like then they can't get jobs, and then they get, you know what I mean? Like the restorative justice has to be done as part of the legalization process, right? So that would be, in my view, would be the best way to go forward, to decriminalize it fully, to expunge all of the convictions, right, that were, and not have them still count somehow for some reason, right? They're gone, right? And if there needs to be like, reparative justice paid out, that can be done as well, if need be. I mean, in my view, it should be done, but that's obviously a harder sell. And then legalize it, and allow people to grow, have their own plants, or have their own et cetera, right? Like that's the thing, is you have to let the average person be able to have cheap and ready access to it. Oh my goodness, thank you so much for the raid. Welcome in, everybody. Thank you so much, Leaping Larry. Hello, welcome in. Welcome raiders, welcome streamer. Welcome in. If one of the mods could please shout out Leaping Larry. Welcome in, comrade. I hope that you had a good stream. And this is Shakespeare. I am a cultural historian focusing on Jewish and Latin American history. And right now, we're currently going over the border and immigration. And right now, we're actually talking about decriminalization of drugs, but how it also plays its part into lessening the violence on the border. And yes, colonialism is cringe. Was a good stream. We talked about subclass and class in Marxism. Oh, that's very interesting. Hello, Boforte. Oh, thank you so much. Are you still able to do the movie streams? Because I haven't seen I haven't seen you do one in a while, Larry. I know that there was a problem like one time when I was in your stream, we were sort of addressing it, but I don't know like if the movies are not okay anymore. 'Twas a good stream. I mainly lurked, but it was good. Good. I'm glad to hear. They're trying to avoid lawsuits. They should be compensation as well as their yeah, exactly. Tomorrow should be okay. Good. Yeah, I'm still doing them every Friday. I had to censor it. I see. For Starship Troopers. Okay. Okay, I see. Yeah, see, that's exactly what happened with the documentary I was looking at yesterday by Prolocult, which they're also leftist, right? And they're looking at capital and, as it affects the indigenous people in the Amazon in particular, with gold mining and such. It's a very good documentary. Highly recommend all of their documentaries. But there's a part where they show indigenous people for whom, Twitch upholding the Western standard of, clothing and everything, right, et cetera, right, would not appreciate to see, I have to do something like that then. Yeah, because for me, I was just like, yeah, I saw the first one. It's so good. Yeah, it's really good. And their one on fascism is, but you can show someone get shot. Yeah, that's true. See, that's the thing. Is like that's a weird thing about America, right? Is like violence. It's unlimited, right? But heaven forbid that you show even a little bit of nudity. Heaven forbid, right? It's just. Whereas like in every other country in the world it's the opposite, right? It's like, oh, some sexuality, that's fine, like it's normal. Did you say Prolocult? Yeah, Prolocult, exactly, with the K. Yeah. They are a Marxist collective that they do films, and they hit it out of the park. Because even without sexualized content, that's true. That's true. Exactly, like with the indigenous tribes that are literally getting malaria for the first time, right? They never, since 1492, right, when malaria was first brought over by Europeans, never had to deal with it since that point. But now they have to deal with it because of gold miners. Horrible. But again, their form of dress does not match the Western one that Twitch upholds. So Puritans really did a number. Yeah, Capital as Extinction, that one. But their one called Decay, it's if it wasn't 2.5 hours long. Like I'm thinking about doing a screening, like a community night. I'm just watching it, but it's just so long. It's really good, but it's so long, right? Like that's the thing. Because like it talks about like British colonialism, the United States imperialism, Germany, right? Because it goes back and forth. I think it's great, but and it also uses a Marxist reading of fascism, right? Written at the time in 1934, Palm Dutt's book on fascism and social revolution, which I highly recommend. It's definitely a very good book. But anyway.
The Texas border town of Eagle Pass hit the headlines this year.
Also, look at this. Like, imagine, like, okay, like, they always want to say America's beautiful. This is not beautiful. I don't know about you, but a whole bunch of, like, this, like, with all this, with just all of this stuff, this is not beautiful. And this is harmful to everything. Like everything in the river, everything like everything that they do. Homozygote showed that one, and that was very recently. That's how I heard of Prolocult. Oh yeah, Homozygote. Yeah, he definitely knows his stuff for sure. And yeah, that one's really really good. Because it also talks about disease, right? And how like one thing that I added was the story about the young man who who came from what was an uncontacted tribe hitherto, to 2020, because again of miners and everything, and illegal logging, etc. That his father had COVID, right? They wouldn't have gotten it otherwise. Hello, FLFNF. Welcome in. Welcome in. That's just gross and sad. I know. I mean, and the destruction is so... I mean, like, as it said in the video, right? Even the rain, like, it doesn't matter. Like even the water cycle doesn't purify it. Right? Like, the mist of the Amazon is mercury poisoned, right? It's just... Yeah, oh, the barbed wire. Yes, indeed. But the story of a young man, he had to carry his father on his back into a city, which again, they were uncontacted up until the COVID pandemic, and then they had to get like the vaccines and stuff, which they had never done before, right? So I did talk about that a little bit, because that was like another thing too, where it's like, once again, indigenous people are getting, diseases for no reason, right? That they could have literally just gone,
The state's Republican governor, Greg Abbott, is a loyal Trump supporter. He's laid razor wire and deployed Texas National Guard troops to stop illegal crossings. That's led to considerable tension between the federal government and the state.
Like all of this is just so ugly. Like, just, I mean, on an aesthetic level, but also just like this, like... This looks like how they always wanted to cry, invasion. This looks like they're preparing for an invasion, full of little prions who swim their way up in your urine. Well, yeah, yeah.
Control is meant to be a federal matter, but the governor refuses.
I mean, it's not very often that I have to bring up, someone's meatus, but whatever.
To give in. A group of activists from an organization called Witness at the Border staged a symbolic protest in Mexico.
Just get the picture of them flying over the bridge.
Perfect.
Josh Rubin, the organization's chair, has come here specially from New York.
Here we are in Mexico. We would be in the United States if we could be, but they blocked it off over there, so we can't even get to the border. Let's go over there where it's cutting out. Because then those people will be able to see us.
Yes. I mean, I've like what used to be called tropical diseases, right, was often something that I was very interested in personally. Like, again, I love reading all sorts of different things, right? Like, that was always something that people actually got, even growing up, like, people saw that as a negative thing, that I liked reading and and knowing about different subjects a lot. But I always was interested in all of that stuff, just personally, right? But yeah, the Amazon, with what you're describing, I mean, there's some very interesting stuff in the Amazon, I'll put it like that. Disease is one of the major tools of the genocider. Yeah. I mean, we can even see that in Gaza, right? Like, polio became a thing in Gaza again, right? Let alone all of the dermatological, right, diseases that are being spread, right? And even something like listeria, right? Because I know right now in the United States, oh my goodness, Jaeger 8 Larson, thank you so much for the 3 months of tier 1 to Leaping Larry. Thank you so very much. I appreciate that. Goodness gracious, 3 months. The baseline attitude white people, especially in Texas, have towards immigration is we should invade Mexico, which doesn't make any sense. Like, oh, we don't, you know what I mean? Like, oh, we don't want this, so let's, okay, see you later. So yeah, like,
Careful when this comes out.
Yep. it looks like it's moving towards some sort of a major crisis because the kinds of things that he's doing here, taking over the function from the federal government and relegating it to the state, looks like what happens at the beginning of a federation that's falling apart. So it has that odor, and it worries people on a political level. What I'm worried about mostly, though, is just the general fate of people who have to move from the place. There's a crisis. The crisis has to do with the world and survival. There's a drought coming, there's climate change.
Oh, sorry.
There are all these things that are happening. Political changes, criminal elements, all these things that threaten people. And what people do when that happens is they move. They get up and they say, I can't expose my children to this anymore. I can't expose myself to this anymore. I've got to go somewhere where I can make a living. And this wire under the surface of the water of this river, that's what's keeping people from coming. Right?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, and I mean, holdover from the Confederate side is just a dumb idea, and it probably I mean, it's not meant to work, right? Like the whole, I mean, that's kind of like what Camilla talks about, right? With like the preemptive threat stuff, right? Like, it's like the people that are always talking about like Iran or Russia or whatever. It's like the United States, you know, outspends every, you know, the next 25 countries, right, including China and Russia combined, right, in terms of its defense budget, right? Like, if people were to say we're scared of the United States, which, granted, I think that the world should be scared. You know what I mean? Like, I think that's something people should like is actually more rational to be scared of, right? Considering its history and everything, right? Then we could actually, you know, I don't know. Yeah, political bring mission, basically, just like chess beating. Right. I mean, it's just a way. And again, just remember, like, the United States has a history of, like, doing this type of preemption stuff so then it can justify something it does, even if it's not in that place that it's doing the preemption rhetoric about, but just so it can do it somewhere, right? Like what's happening at Israel and in Gaza, right? It's just a way to, you know, poke at Iran, which there's no reason to, right? Like, there's no reason to poke at Iran, right? Like, if you, like, literally, if Iran was to start receiving all of its frozen funds and stolen assets that the United States has, it would not be so willing to, you know, push itself so much to the brink, but wouldn't want Larry to get an army out on a bad day. Oh yeah, that's. But I mean, he's right. Like one, there are already climate refugees even within the United States, right? Like, there are people who are First Nations people in by Barrow, Alaska, if I remember correctly. And they can no longer live on the islands that they used to inhabit because now there isn't the permanent ice cover that there used to be that allowed them to do that allowed for their hunting seasons, right? Like their cycle, right, of their seasons, right, has now been taken away from them by climate change. And so now they have to live on the mainland and, now have to completely change their form of being because of, so.
His anger at the Republic.
Also, the fact that they have the wire just below the water surface, that's fucked up. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, the wire itself as such is fucked up, right? But in the water, like that hidden, that's.
Republican governor of Texas is shared by Juanita Martinez. The chair of the Eagle Pass Democratic Party is very much opposed to the policies of Greg Abbott. She takes us into the basement of her party headquarters.
You can see we have some of our signs here that are ready for the next demonstration. Migrants have human rights, and border communities say don't trust Abbott. We must come out in droves and vote Democrat in November just to give him a message. So this is our fight, and we're going to fight it all the way.
There is no other issue that they can run on except this. Scaring people into thinking that we're getting overrun by immigrants, and that's the only issue they have. The rhetoric that the Republicans are putting out is that it's an invasion. There are too many coming, when the truth is quite the opposite. We need more immigrants to come and work. Biden is setting record.
Well, I mean, that That's fucking vile and gross. I know. Like, yeah, fictional villains, right? Like, that's something that, like, you have to be, like, you know, there are people, horrific people in this world that would hear that and be like, even I didn't think of that. I respect people who are at this age and able to keep up that political fervor. She is a little lived up short. I mean, yeah, she's you know, she's lived up, you know, obviously, but, you know, again, you know, especially right now in the context of many people arguing, you know, and discussing whether or not people should vote, etc., right? I definitely think that, like, in like that, you know, her case, right? I think that definitely makes sense, right? For sure. But yeah, I mean, the fact that there are people of that generation, right, that are still, like, you know, for example, like, one of their things is like, we need to turn Texas blue, right? I mean, that is one of the reasons why Texas has almost, you know, kind of become orange, purple. I know the colors that they use for the United States. Yes, they do not become Movimiento Ciudadano. I wish they would, though, because then that would change everything if they were to become like a Sockdem party. But anyway, but yeah, like, you know, like that does cause political tension that can be productive, I should say. That can be productive, right? Just shows that there's people out there able to hold out some hope. Oh yeah, I mean, like, whether or not you agree with her overall message, she is still willing to dedicate all of this time and effort, right, to try to, out of a desire to not only protect those who are already in the United States, but also those who are trying to get to the United States, right? It's hard to hold on to that. The fight to slip into apathy for me is constant. Oh, I know what you mean. Like, there was a very large contingent of younger people, right? Like millennial, and that's what I mean by younger, right? Millennial and younger, right? That kind of already have the apathy a priori, right? Like that's kind of how particularly American society, but also other Western societies, have kind of had their politics be in a way that's like, you know, the apathy was kind of like a foregone conclusion for many people. And the United States is definitely one of those places that likes to make it seem like that is the case, right? Because that actually helps, right? Like, right-wing causes, right? Like apathy overall, right, will only help fascists at the end of the day. I mean, that's all it really does, you know, overarchingly. Also, again, if you'd like to support me in any way, you can always do so by going to my throne and trying to over here, this book right over here that we're trying to fund, it's at 72%. If we could get it to 100, then I will react to one of I guess what if I'll hiss video. Just don't know which one. I'll let Narwhal choose if Narwhal's still in chat. No worries. I had oh, sorry, my bad. But yeah. Oh my goodness. Did something? Oh, Mega. You contributed to the other book, I see. Yes, I that's the one that I worried about having as my main thing on Throne, because it does show, you know, what it shows. You know what I mean? Like, it's a little...
The number of people that have been employed, and the jobs are here, and we do need them.
The US economy is on the upswing with accelerated growth and low unemployment figures. And although the numbers of illegal crossings have been dropping since March 2024,
Wait, what? What do you mean? Oh, they've been dropping? Oh, I wonder why. Thank you so much, Omega Star. Again, I truly, truly appreciate anything that people can help me in any way, right? Any contribution or even advice or even just a chat, right? I appreciate it all truly, and even all of you that are watching or just listening, I appreciate all of you.
Lyman says that he's worried about his country. Regularly, the physical Trump.
Why does he have to be so stereotypical? Like, come on. It seemed the coolest to me. Yeah. I feel like I should change it out for the book, but this one's so close to being funded, which is why I guess once this one gets funded, then I will change it for bottoms up, because I really want to read that book. I really do. But thank you again so much. It's a really, like, I don't know. It's a really good book from what I know.
Fan takes time off to shoot new reports for Border Hawk, his brother's website.
Oh my god. Border Hawk. Oh gosh. Paul Squall, if you're still here, like, I know that you always like chud content, and like looking for hogs and such, as people would say. Some people would say. Well, I don't know how you would read this one.
For his video reports, Wid often crosses over to the other side of the
I was wondering, because you made this book sound kind of risque. I imagine the title bottoms. Yes, it is risque. Like, the cover of the book is risque. Like, to the point where I'm like, if I have it flipping over every 5 seconds with the throne thing, I don't know, how Twitch, I don't know. I love watching. Oh, yeah. Like as soon as I saw that, dude, I'm just like, this is a chud. Like, I can just tell. Like, I can just tell he's gonna come over here down. I'll grow here on Border Hawk, and we're gonna start talking about the invasion ongoing at the border. Like, what is the book about? It's about queer Mexican culture, right? And yeah, that's that, and it's looking at it particularly from the lens of looking at how machismo and other, like, gender politics, quote unquote, right, play into that, right? Whereas, like, the one that's currently up here is about, yes, it is amazing. Like, I've heard so many good things about it, including from, like, the editor of it, or the person that helped edit it. So yes, it's one of those books. So.
Rio Grande to Mexico. Today he's meeting Efrain Gonzalez, a Mexican journalist.
Hola, señor. Buenas. Efrain is saying the water is very low in the Rio, so it makes it very easy to cross.
The two men work together regularly.
He even has to say it in the Rio. It is very fascinating, because it's also looking at it from, like, oh my goodness gracious. What just happened? Oh my goodness. Thank you so very much, Eric's Blue. Oh my goodness, Eric's Blue. I appreciate that so very much. Thank you. I really do. That is so sweet of you. There's a webcomic called Murenga that's similar, just queer African perspective. There is one that's a webcomic, and it's of a trans Cuban perspective, like Afro. I think it's Afro Cubana. We got your 6. The Rio. Like, let me just give me one quick second. Give me one quick second. I have to see something. Because I feel like I'm like, let me see. I'll put it as the main one, just so that way then people know what I'm talking about. Because trust me, like, once you see it, you'll know exactly what I mean. Let's see if it shows. Oy, boy. What on earth? What happened? Oh, thank you so much for the... Oh, thank you so much again, Eric's Blue. I really appreciate that. That's very sweet of you. For the... The Rio Grande. Like, okay, you can kind of see it. It's kind of hidden, though, and I think that's probably for the best. But you can kind of see what it is, right? Because it's also looking at it from a, like, bottom perspective, so to speak, right? Like, it's looking at how, like, bottom shaming and other such things impact, etc., etc.
Their reports often run on Fox News.
This area is the river. This is the Rio?
Why can't he just say this is the river? Like, they know what a river is. The guy knows English, obviously. Like, is this the Rio? But the fact that he's also helping this dude, right? This guy, right? That, like, looks like he would be, like, one of the models for, or not, maybe not even the models, but you know what I mean? Like, one of the poster people for, like, for Black Rifle Coffee or something, right? Like the Chud coffees. Right, like the way how he's dressed, like, oh, Black Rifle Coffee, it will keep you awake like a shotgun on a Sunday morning. I don't know, something like that. The river has a Mexican soul. Eric's blue is a Russian op. Oh my gosh. Seeing how being queer is illegal in some places. Right, and another thing too is that, like, different aspects of queer life in a Mexican context aren't as acceptable, right? In the diaspora that they are in Mexico itself, and vice versa. It's a very interesting book, because it's very like drag is more acceptable in Mexico. Like, I remember the last time I was in Mexico City with my mom, I saw all these posters for all these, like, drag events. Meanwhile, in the U.S., there's, like, nothing going on because because people are being chuds, right? And I'm like, the capital city has these huge things for, like, la draga, as they say in Spanish, right? La draga. And so I was like, what a difference. Like, just a complete different, like the clubs and everything, just a complete, I mean, there literally was the nightclub that I think people might remember this, like, what the sticker said. I don't want to say it right now, but, like, the sticker to give, like, people info about it, like, it literally just said something. 2 words. 2 words. It said 2 words. I'll put it like that. The river has a Mexican soul. True. That's why they should, we drink Death Wish coffee in this house. Oh, I've heard of that. I mean, I've heard it's, I don't know. I put it on my reading list as any other Pinko commie. I am never going to be able to finish that list. I mean, again, like, I have my, Also, I have a question, and Chad, I apologize for pausing so much, but, like, do you think that these boats here, that they observe the invisible line in the river? Because these boats are not really, like, known for their ease of turning, right? Do y'all think that it sticks to its side of the border? Because I sure as hell don't. I mean, that's just me.
So as you can see behind me, there's still quite a bit of clothing. This part of the Rio, the other standards is over the top of the camera. Over the top of my head is going to be Eagle Pass. It's very close, very easy to access.
In December 2023, Ephraim shot a very interesting scene. It
He's
showed US Border Patrol, a federal agency, helping migrants cross the border.
The video show how the Border Patrol agents.
Oh no. He's helping him. He works for him. Oh, Ephraim. Oy, oy. Okay, maybe I'm misunderstanding. But he's wearing that, like, part zipper jacket or sweater or shirt, long sleeve shirt, the kind that they, like, it looks like the Under Armour style shirts that they have. Yeah, he's got the Oakleys on too. Yeah. Long as it's made in America, brother. Yeah, Yeah. Oh, yeah, I see the Oakleys, yep.
Used the machinery, the forklift tractor, to rise the barbed wire to allow to hundreds of migrants to cross the Eagle Pass.
Now Texas is trying to erect this to...
That's good. Oh, that's like the one good thing that they did. Like, that's like the one good bulldozer right there. That one bulldozer gets well, it doesn't get anything because it's still, but you know, like, that's what it should have done. It should have just gotten rid of everything, to be quite honest. It shouldn't have just lifted up one part. America, no step on snake. Yeah, pretty much.
Prevent people from crossing. The federal government will say, oh, this is in the way of us doing our job. Texas will say, well, this is protecting our border. So this is a perfect description and a narrative that a frame was able to capture to show the clash between what the state is doing and what the federal government is doing. And that was on perfect display here.
Oh my god, you gotta be... Bro, this dude is so tan too. Like, I don't know. Like, if I saw him just walking around, I'll probably be like, Señor. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. Like, on one hand, like, he looks like a chud, but also I'm gonna, you know, I'll probably be like, oye, señor. You know? I don't know.
It's made the Texas governor all the more determined not to remove the razor wire, despite pressure from the federal government. Donald Trump has repeatedly lent him his support.
Well, I guess we know how that's gonna go. If, you know. Yeah, go inside, David. Is your name David? Yeah. Just...
Every evening, WID edits footage for Border Hawk.
I mean, just the name, Border Hawk.
To avoid Border Patrol.
The website...
Okay, even if it was people trying to avoid Border Patrol, they have every right to. You know what I mean? I avoid Border Patrol. Everybody should avoid Border... Chinga la migra. You know what I mean? Like, everybody should want to avoid Border Patrol. Like, nobody should even want to even be around the Border Patrol people, in my opinion.
It is attracting more and more subscribers ahead of the elections.
I think that people are caring about it now because it's the worst it's ever been. The current administration has allowed close to 10 million people to come across our borders and have encounters, and that's the number that we know. That number.
It probably was, you know, it probably was, as they might say along the border, Oakley's Mickey Mouse. Yeah.
Is likely much higher, closer to 15, possibly 20 by some estimates. I believe that.
Citation needed. I know I don't like to say that, you know, because you know, people like to say it in just a kind of random way, but I really want to know where on earth they got this number from, because they're always like, oh yeah, like this, like the actual official statistics say it's about, you know, 24,000 blah blah blah, but other people say it's about 20 million, and I think that that's correct. You know, like, bruh, you like I gotta know. They look like murderous Michelin men. I mean,
that if we don't slow this process to some degree, then our nation would certainly be in trouble. So people, I think, put two and two.
How would it be in trouble? Like, see, like that's the problem. Is like they even at the official debates, you know, with whatever, they just let them say it, but they never ask them how. How are they gonna? How is it going to be in trouble? In what way? People that really care about their families enough to walk a whole fucking continent to be here? That's just putting two and two together, getting 20 million. Yeah, that's what it sounds like. Because like 20 million makes, I mean, that's like almost all the population of California. There's no just
together is the administration not only not blocking this, but are they facilitating it to a degree? And they're waking up to that in our election year. Hopefully.
Wait, they're blocking it and facilitating it? I get what he's trying to say, but he needs to reword that. Like, I don't mean to like edit your talking points, bro, but you can't block and facilitate something at the same time. Like, that doesn't make any sense. Every day, man's on the block. Yeah.
Making a change going forwards.
American side of the border lies the town of Mexicali. Its cultural center is less than 50 meters from the border wall. Oscar Valenzuela has worked here as an archivist and historian for 30.
Like, I literally looked at this and I'm like, ooh, I want to go look there. As soon as I saw the archive, I'm like, oh, I want to go look at that. like imagine seeing the video of the women dancing, right? And it's like, and like playing in the background of that dude, and he's like, you know, whatever, that the culture's gonna whatever, blah blah blah. It's just like, what are you talking about? Like, again, people don't want to move a whole continent away from where their family is. Like, I wouldn't, just don't. That reminds me, I have to email someone. And they're not an art archivist, but they are an archivist and historian.
He likes to say that the history of migration is everyday life for him, and he's not.
It's everyday life for everybody. That's how it has been since forever. Like, literally forever. There is no reason why. Like, again, like, even my parents and my grandparents remember a time when you could just go right up to the border post and they would ask you, what's your citizenship? Mexican or American? And that was the only question they asked. Now it's like, you know, that's not Mexico. Where's like, yeah, right, yeah, there's no yellow tint, exactly. There's no. It's like, oh wait, they have technology and air conditioning. No way. It's not just a mud hut, and the three amigos aren't there. Like.
Exaggerating.
Open the window, then you can see what we see every day.
Suddenly I saw people going over the wall. I filmed it.
Yeah, like, okay, so since this is right here, look, right. There used to be this place I used to go to that's by my grandparents' house in Tijuana. Right? Which is actually by the rabbi's house, interestingly enough. And I kid you not, like, this was the view. Like, it was just like this. And it was like growing up as a kid, like, I forget, like, if it was a doctor. No, it wasn't a doctor. It was something. I don't remember what it was. I just remembered, like, this, like, that, like, we would have to walk up a big hill, and then at the top of the hill was where, like, it flattened, and that's where the fence was. And, like, this was the view, right? And in fact, some people wanted to have the view, like, this as their view, because it's, you know, interesting, I guess. But I remember thinking, like asking, the Devil's Rejects are definitely there. Well, I remember asking, like, doesn't it feel like we're in a cage? And this is me as a child, right? This is me, like, very, very young. And I just remember that, like, that my grandparents and my parents, because I forget what it is. I don't remember. I think for all I know, it was probably a doctor's office. But I don't know. Or maybe, I don't even know. Maybe it was some legal office. I don't know. I honestly can't remember. But it was on Calle Fronteriza. I think that's what they call it, or that's what it's called. Anyway, it doesn't matter. And I remember just saying that, and, like, them looking at me and being like, you know, like it's like those things that kids say that are kind of like, not necessarily like, oh, it tells you the truth, quote unquote, right? But it's like one of those things, like, oh, when you observe it with, like, a child's eye, right, it does kind of add something to the situation, right? And it's the, like, oh, ¿por qué se mira si estamos en una jaula? Like, why does it seem like we're in a cage? We're not in a, you know, like, the general distribution of intelligence is in full effect. Hard to say, tell things just at looking at people. Observe what they do and say. Some people are incredibly intelligent, smart. On the other side, well, I wish my blinds worked that way. Oh, or you just yeah. So be respectful. Who doesn't like a nice gated community? That's what heaven is like. That's a fucked up movie. I guess I should see it again. I forgot the details. Where they? Oh, the cannibal family. I don't know.
With my smartphone. It took about 30 seconds for them to get over.
There are those who set up the ladder. Then a very agile, sporty man climbs up and over and starts running. And while he's being chased, the migrants climb over.
Like I think to me it's very interesting how they're like looking at this as this kind of like spectacle, right? Because that's what it's become, right? Like it in many ways, right? Like it's like that's what the media narrative is to just create a spectacle about the border, not tell you about the border itself, but to create an idea, right? A spectacle of people crossing the border, right? That pretty much yeah, that's what there's been smarter people who I have commented on that phenomenon, like how the world should be seen through the eyes of children. It makes more sense than how the world actually works. Yeah, like I just remember because it was like the first time I'd ever really been like that close to it, because it was right across the street, right? Because like you can see the pictures, right, of like Mexican cities that are right against the wall, right? That, you know what I mean, where it's like really densely packed, right? And then it's like suddenly there's the wall, then there's that strip of land that they have to have for their trucks, and then there's like farmland essentially, right? And you know, for reals though, copium for me, I'm or for the news.
Like many border residents, Oscar has lived through numerous migration crises over the decades. He doesn't think the current crisis is more worrying than the others. He thinks it's all about...
See? Like this is actually... Like, it's funny, because the actual historian and archivist in the room, literally, is like, this is not unlike every other crisis that we've had. Right? It's only on the American side of the border where they're like, oh my goodness, they're going to come across the border and they're going to steal our golden corrals from us. You know, like, no. No. I don't want to go to Golden Corral anyway. But, you know, it's like, it's interesting how, again, like, the historian and archivist that has to have, you know, to some extent known how the city ebbs and flows vis-a-vis immigration, is like, oh yeah, this is normal. People coming and going. Right? And yet on the other side of the border, it's like they would never say such a thing. Oh, it's normal for people to cross the border. My aunt lived in San Antonio before she died, and this fake migrant thing upset her so much. Yeah, like, I just never understood it personally. Like, I never understood it on any side, right? Like, Mexico should take in, you know, Haitian immigrants, etc., etc. Like, it doesn't matter to me where in the world it is, right? But in the United States, because it's so sensationalized, it's always been one of those things where I'm just like, why are she really thought of people as people? Right? I mean, like, that's literally all you have to do is just afford other people basic humanity. But that's where the racialization of immigration, right, becomes an issue, right? Because that's the exercise of power, right? And Jody Melamed goes into that. So
politics.
The flows of migration are irregular. Sometimes they rise, and at others they fall. What is new is the way illegal immigration has been instrumentalized in recent U.S. elections.
Exactly what I just said. Yes, very true, very true.
How did Donald Trump describe the migrants? As criminals, rapists, murderers, as people with diseases. We'd never seen this degree of hate, of racism, before.
Another paradox made in the US. The United States of America was built over centuries by migrants from all over the world. Now
this talking point. this talking point. It's very interesting because there is this really interesting. KRS-One has a whole song about America's being invaders on a Mexican land. Yeah. Oh, really? Interesting. Yeah, like I just don't it's funny because like one of the things that people like to talk about is like the Alamo, and it's like, well, George Washington didn't build the Alamo, right? Like people that spoke Spanish did, right? You know what I mean? Like it's just like one of these or even things that were built during like the short period between Mexican independence and the Mexican-American War, right? It's like this weird thing where it's like somehow that history doesn't exist, right? And there's actually a novel that is written about California, about the Californios as they're called Ramona, that sort of talks about like that culture as it was sort of ending, right? Because unlike what it. Oh my goodness! Thank you so very much, Omega Star. Thank you for the gift sub to They Love Judas. And it's very good to see you, Judas.
So what many people here fear most, hate, distrust, and fear, could decide the upcoming elections in November.
Okay. Again, like I just like that attitude towards it just has never, because I guess having again like gone into it, and again like I have like Femi Efo has his book in here, right? Like where like earlier when I talked about the fact that like within 100 miles of the U.S. border, right, the U.S.-Mexico border, and technically the U.S.-Canada border, but typically the enforcement of the non-enforcement of the Constitution happens along the U.S.-Mexico border within 100 miles of that. One thing is that I kind of want to discuss just really quickly. Again, talking about Camille Fojas' book, which I think is, it's important to also bring in some other stuff as well. So I'm quoting her now, right? This repetition with varying levels of innovation became the basis of formulaic, cost-efficient, high-volume reality TV series. So this is talking about, and it'll name the shows in a second, but just the growth of surveillance capacity begets the expansion of a surveillance culture and its spectacular scenes and plot lines, right? So the shows she's talking about are shows like Homeland Security USA, Border Town Laredo, Border Wars, Law on the Border, Border Security, America's Front Line, right? That's what she's talking about, right? A number of serialized TV shows do the work that the Department of Homeland Security's integrated surveillance programs failed to accomplish. They project total visual and informational control of the border and recruit public participation in and support of border surveillance initiatives. So this campaign to, right, propagandize about immigration, right, through these types of shows, and through certain forms of technology as well. Like there is a website where you can go and like help survey the border for them. I'm not even joking. I'm obviously not going to say the website because don't go there. But it's there, right, if you want to research it on your own. They do so in part by aligning Border Patrol storylines with the classical fictional genre of the Western. This symbolic gesture cultivates audiences attuned to the genre, while it promotes ideas that cross purposes with the technocratic aspirations of the Department of Homeland Security. These shows, as modern Westerns, are premised on the importance of human and animal resources as privileged borderlands denizens imbued with skill and intuition, over the role of machines and technology as sites of automation and signs of automatic security. This biologic is key to the overarching symbolic storyline and continual refrain of border security as a cat and mouse game. Furthermore, in the border-valent media, so this is again the media that is produced that is supposed to produce like these anxieties about the border, but also supposed to produce in people, right, that watch these shows, right, their participation in the said thing, right, in this surveillance culture, right, human preeminence over machines is part of the humanitarian alibi of the border surveillance regime, right? So by focusing on, like, you know, like the shows where they like stop people where they're because they have one where it's like To Catch a Smuggler, right? And it's like people at airports. Like, that is actually has the one of the lowest rates of success, right? Like everything that happens, right? Like all of these stops and seizures and searches, right? They have very low success because most of the time people aren't doing anything wrong, right? Like there's nothing bad that they're doing, but they like to emphasize that on these shows because then they start to, for example, raise suspicion with like, oh, they look suspicious, right? Whatever that means, right? And one thing that Kamiya also talks about is that then things that we wouldn't necessarily think about, right, like transness, for example, can also be weaponized against the people that are trying to cross the border, right? Anti-criminal police shows are where Polynesians are the most represented in mainstream media. It's well, right, and it's the same thing with BIPOC people in the United States. Like the shows where they will show where they will have the most representation, right, of will typically be things which racialize, right, specific aspects of whether it's immigration or crime, right, and try to tie those things to that specific group of people. But what is interesting is that like where this connects with like queerness and with transness in particular is that there is this idea that Kamiya talks about called the regime of hyper transparency or something along the line, or the regime of absolute truth, something along those lines. I know that she mentions transparency later, but it's about the fact that if you don't look right, like say you change your gender marker on your passport, right, because you can do that more easily than you can with your state IDs, for example, in many other states in the United States. If you don't match what the border officer, right, the Homeland Security officer, excuse me, expects you to look like, right, they can hold that against you as you lying to them, right? I know it doesn't make any sense, but they see that as duplicity, right? Like, oh, you're lying about who you are, even though you're being honest, right? Like, even if right, it corresponds with your actual gender identity, because it doesn't correspond to their idea of your gender identity, they can hold it against you. And that can lead to, you know, other problems down the line, including criminal prosecution, right? And so, and as Judas is saying, right, like, it was just a cis black woman, and so there's a racialized component, right? Exactly, because there is like there is also that racialized element to it, right? So if you're Mexican and trans, then you are held to, right, to this regime of absolute truth, to an absolute transparency, so that everything you do becomes suspicious just because you don't correspond to their idea of what you should be, right? And if you present in a way that in their view, contradicts or goes against, right, what the gender marker says, that also makes them think that you are, like, that can lead to them saying that you're trying to lie to the officer, right? And that makes them, raise suspicion on you. It sounds ridiculous, but that's literally how it does work. Because in the logic of capitalism, in the logics of race, in the logics of so many of these things, right? You always see this. I never thought of propaganda in that way. Yeah, I mean, like, that's why I always tell people, like, this book is kind of worth the read, as well, because, like, again, a lot of this propaganda, especially the ones that talk about like to catch a smuggler, right? Everything is based on, oh, they look blah blah blah, right? So much of it is so racialized, but also so much of it is, oh, they don't fit into what what this border officer thinks they should be like, right? And that if you have any hesitancy answering a question, that just raises their suspicion, right? And then now that makes other people start to think that that's normal, right? Oh my goodness gracious. Oh, thank you so much, MBN. Thank you so much for the donation, for the contribution to Bottoms Up. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. So that is why, like, in my research, like, there is some interesting things where having to deal with people that are like non-binary, right, or regardless, and going through a border control. I mean, I've already told. Don't people talk about how a lot of body checks are straight up? I mean, that too. I mean, like, again, because you like, what this does is then it reinforces it in the public, right? Where then you're sort of made to feel that you can't say that that's what it was, right? Because everything's, oh, it's your fault, right? Like, you somehow brought it upon yourself, right, by being suspicious to someone else, right? Which, again, does not make any sense, right? Like, it doesn't make any sense to be able to mind read someone else, but it's part of the propaganda, especially those, like, to catch a smuggler, the border ones and everything, because it's there to weaponize that type of logic, right? So anyway, so how are people doing? I know we just went over a pretty big topic, but I want to see how we are right now. Is everything good? Is everything especially if you're guilty, that doesn't justify half the stuff they do over. Right, exactly. Like, nothing you do, right, justifies their ability to do anything to you, right? Like, nothing justifies that. And that's where a lot of people kind of, like, but again, that's part of this propaganda. That's part of this border valence, as Camilla writes it, right? Like, it makes people start to think that way, right? Because it reinforces it and reinforces it and reinforces it and reinforces it, to where then that's how people think, and then they start to do it themselves, right? Like, it's so let's see here. And it's all based on racism, where people are okay with BIPOC being treated subpar. Oh yeah, I mean, like, the amount of violence that is shown vis-a-vis BIPOC is always magnitudes higher than is ever portrayed vis-a-vis white people. I mean, and that's part of the thing, right? Like, that's where any little amount of violence is seen as like, oh, and the cops have to apologize and blah 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 blah, right? You know, but you know, I had always thought of it as just portraying cops as protectors. We'll see what, but the thing that belies that, right? The thing that we have to keep in mind is that the problem is that the failure rate is too high, right? That's one of those things, right? That adds to that, right? So anyway, I am going to go make some sopes for dinner. So we're going to raid out here on Twitter. We're going to go raid Lance over at the surf. So if everyone would please get into the machine so we could head on over. Make sure to tell Lance hello for me. Also, cops being the first person to call when something goes wrong. That's true, yeah. I mean, like in my neighborhood, we don't do that. Anyway, I see you all later. Bye. Good night. Also, thank you so much, YouTube. I really appreciate all of you being here. If anybody would like to drop a link to any to either Irene's or someone else's, that would be totally fine. But like I said, I've got to go eat some dinner. I'm quite hungry, so